Well, good evening and welcome members, officers and those members of the public here at the meeting and those joining us virtually. Item 1 on our agenda this evening, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received from Councillors Christie, Councillors Ford, Councillor Heppel and Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Kirsty. Item 2 is to confirm the minutes of the last meeting, which was the 11th of December. I'll just run through them page by page, starting with page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Yeah,
Councillor Brendan?
page 16, Jan. The minutes of page 16 in no way reflect what happened at Bridgehampton in fact, due to the fact that you made a rather demeaning and belittling remark about me that was personally directed toward my domestic circumstances was wholly inappropriate, I was somewhat disconcerted and couldn't follow the situation. But the facts are that after the motion was seconded, there was a discussion at the top of the room which could not be heard at the other end, particularly by me and people below me. Councillor Batt stood up and the chair appeared to have a private conversation with him which could not be heard. There was obviously some kind of horse trading going on down there. My husband had seconded the motion, and according to the Constitution, if a motion is proposed, duly proposed, legally proposed and seconded, then it has to be voted on, unless I withdrew the motion, which I did not, or that an amendment was made and that amendment had to be voted on. None of those things happened. This was a serious breach of the Constitution, a really serious breach, ignoring A61, A66, A68, A69, and A and B. These were all ignored by the chair, who's supposed to be an experienced chairperson. The motion was not withdrawn. I did not agree to it being withdrawn. It was just shelved by the chair by his own agenda, which has nothing to do with the Constitution. And that is why it's on the agenda again today. And the fact of the matter is that if this is the kind of standard we have at this council, where the chair makes a personal remark about me, which I took serious offence to, and then totally ignores, breaches the Constitution, then obviously we're in dire need of some kind of remedy to the situation. And obviously we'll come to that later in the meeting. But the fact of the matter is that those minutes do not reflect this completely it's dismissal of the Constitution, a neglect of the way the rules of debate should be conducted. So is this a precedent? Is this what we're setting down as a precedent, that we ignore the Constitution from now on? That we just do what we like? Is that what this council has come to? Surely not.
I was at page 16, I believe.
It is.
Page 17.
Chair.
Sorry,
I point on there about the date of the next standards meeting, and we weren't sure at the time of the last meeting what the date was. It isn't in fact in January. It's the 28th of February. Just a point of clarification, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to clarify that, but thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Page 17, 18, and 19. I'd like to move those minutes. Someone like to second them? Councillor Newton seconded. All in favour, please show. Against? And abstentions?
That's 24, 3 against and 6 abstentions.
Clearly carried. Thank you. Moving on then to the action list, pages 20 to 21. All actions are now complete. Moving then on to item 4, public contribution. We have no public speakers this evening. Declarations of interest is item number 5. Well, you all know the score by now. If you have an item that you have to declare, please do so at the appropriate time. Item 6, agreement of agenda items between part 1 and 2. There are part 2 items this evening. Councillor Thomas?
I'd like to move that this is discussed in public. I don't see why this matter should be discussed in confidentiality, in confidence. Without going into any detail, I think there's 2 elements. One of it is the negotiations which the council were involved in, which, as I understand it, are now complete on the basis that they failed. The other part of it is that it involves a site that the council already owns. So I don't see why there's any need for this to be discussed in private.
Thank you. I had a conversation about this very item earlier on today, and the item you referred to as complete is by no means complete. It's still ongoing. There is the expectation that we will still be pursuing that item. So that's why it has to be in part 2. If it isn't in part 2, then we can't discuss it and let it be withdrawn from the agenda.
But the other part of the recommendation concerns site that Torridge owns. Can we not discuss that in public?
That one we probably could, but it's one, it's one agenda item. It's not 2 separate agenda items, is my understanding.
It seems a way of hiding things by linking the 2.
Well, I mean, if members want to have a full and frank discussion about the item that's on the agenda, clearly we need to do them in part 2, because we can't do it with the public in the room, and particularly as we're on YouTube. So I think, in fairness, to allow everyone to have their say, it needs to be in part 2. That's my understanding of it.
Well, on the point of order, if the councillor made a proposition, could I second it if he has?
I'm happy to move that. Yeah, make a proposition.
Second it.
Councillor Leather?
Yeah, in part 2 item, there's some commercially sensitive information. The 2 sites that will be under discussion are linked in the report. You can't separate one from the other. That's why it's in part.
Yeah.
There will be an opportunity at a later date when it can all go out into the public domain, but not at current, because it does affect the commercial site and commercially sensitive information.
Okay, well, as Councillor Brenton once said to me, I don't believe in an awful lot, but I do believe in democracy. Then it's been proposed and seconded. Oh, sorry, can you ask?
Well, I was going to level proposing that we go with the.
Yes, but it has been proposed and has been seconded, so we need to take a vote on that, I believe.
Propose and second for the recommendation to
Yeah.
split, but we've got 2.
Exactly. Okay, so we take Councillor Thomas's first, that we hear the discussion in part 1. It's been seconded by Councillor Brenton. So let's be clear, this is to hear everything in part 1 and not go into part 2. So show of hands in support of Councillor Thomas's motion. And against? Abstentions?
7 for, 22 against and 1 abstention.
Okay, that's clearly defeated then. We don't need to take a vote on the other. Item 7 is to consider correspondence brought forward by the chair. I have nothing in particular.
No, Chair.
Item 8 is to receive a presentation from Catherine Allen, Director of Strategy for NHS Royal Devon University Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. It's a bit of a title, but over to you, Catherine, and you have a 10-minute slot for your presentation.
So I was going to split it between myself and Zahara Hart.
That's fine. You can have 5 minutes each if you wish.
Thank you. I'll try and do it in 3. So thank you ever so much for inviting me. Can you hear me okay? I've got quite a loud. Is this magic thing going to move as I speak, or do I have to do it?
Yeah. Can I just, before you start, you can have a few seconds after. We've only got the one screen working tonight. We've got a technical issue with the screen behind you, so I'm afraid those that are on this side of the room are going to have to come in and a little bit to have a look. I do apologise.
Not part of the presentation, but for a small fee I can be.
The slides have been emailed round to you.
Do I just say next
Just
slide?
say next slide.
Perfect. Next slide, please. So I'm here just to really talk to you about some changes to the structure of the NHS. I'm going to try and keep my acronyms to the lowest possible level, but really the sense of what I'm trying to convey is just we have a redefined purpose in the NHS, and locally that's come down to we've got some focuses, some new organisations that we are working within, and I think one of the key things to point out to this is we've got integrated care systems that were founded in legislation in 2022, and Devon is a whole integrated care system, and within that there is 4 purposes, and there are some that will make sense, some that are all about improving the health and wellbeing of the population. But I'd just like to draw your attention to the 4th one, which is about the NHS's responsibility in the broader social and economic development. We understand that you need healthy people to be working and healthy families to be educating to deliver their most potential. So there is a shift in government policy about the purpose of the NHS. If I could have the next slide, please. You'll be really familiar with this map. Obviously, it's Devon. North Devon and Torridge are put into what's called a local care partnership. And again, once you take the 4 purposes of the ICSs, the LPs are really designed to provide the structures to work in partnership. So the NHS is working in partnership with all of the councils, the voluntary care sectors, and local bodies such as yourself to really think about what is driving health inequality, poor health, poor economic prospects in your local community, and what can we do together to resolve some of these things. Now I know Torridge is levelling up partnership, levelling up boards and all sorts of things happening, and they're targeting levels of deprivation in the country. So there's opportunities here because the NHS is being asked to think outside of its barriers of the hospital walls and thinking about what's happening in people's lives. So if I could have the next 2 slides, I'll skip on from that. You've got these slides, so I don't need to talk about the detail. But I think what's striking is in thinking about the ICS and in thinking about how does the NHS in Devon work and what are our priorities. There are loads of things on this slide that you'll expect to see: people's health, getting people treated quickly. But there's climate change, there is housing affordability and quality, there is there's education, training and skills, and these are things that would probably have never appeared on an NHS strategy a couple of years back. But the point is, in policy terms, they're now being recognised as absolute enablers to a healthy population. And I think some of the things that I've talked to Steve quite a lot about is we've sort of kind of opened our doors really in the NHS. We are here. We know we can't solve some of these things on our own. And so what I've done in the next few slides is just to help you see where our strategies align, where we have common purpose in thinking about the health and wellbeing of our local population. So if I if you could click onto another slide, it's brilliant. This and I'm having the support. I've just put some blue boxes up here which say top blue are what are the priorities for NHS Devon as it expresses itself, and then the bottom blocks are the ones that we think we, you know, are enablers to achieving that. And if you could just flick through where I think our paths align are now in yellow. So community development, really resilient communities, employment for those not in education, apprenticeship, unpaid carers, health protection, some of our immunisation, the measles outbreaks at the moment will affect us all in terms of the working age population, school age population. How do we keep our population healthy? Housing is particularly an issue for us at the moment. Sahara will talk to you in a minute about how this is impacting us. But housing for our staff is a massive issue. We're already one of the most remote hospitals in the country. Attracting staff and being able to find housing for those staff is a massive problem for us. Providing the transport to get them to their house, to our hospitals, is another issue. And then you overlay that with patients, the patient journeys, coming into our car parks, trying to access healthcare. It's massive. So housing, I've rested on that a long time because I think you'll get the sense that's a massive issue for us in the NHS. If on, I think there's a couple more. Yeah, sustainability of our hospital. Again, Sahara will talk to you about that. But what we mean by that is not only the environmental impact, but also the sustainability of our services in the most rural area in the UK. If you could keep skipping on. So in the enablers, I think again we've got a couple of things where I've noticed you have got these priorities, and we need you to be working on these priorities. If I can put it so bluntly, we need to make. We've got a net zero challenge in the NHS. We've got a workforce challenge. We've got health inequalities that are widening, and so on and so on. Oh, sorry, and we've got a digital model of care that actually we need your help with as well. We need broadband, and we need to think about how we get access to people irrespective of their digital literacy. So that's hopefully a snapshot of where I think what the NHS Devon strategy is. If I move on, I've also taken the liberty of looking at your strategy too, and similar, if you could click through. All of our priorities align. You can see that we need a vibrant economy. We need a world-class environment to attract people and to be sustainable in. We need a balanced housing market to support local health services. And we need really strong and inclusive communities that support each other and are strong. So, and I could go on, but I hope I'm making the point to you that we can't provide NHS services that are sustainable without the support of really good local council plans and a real vision for our community. So I'm here really to say, can we please work together? And my last slide before I hand over to my colleague is so we've condensed the North Devon, so we provide North Devon District Hospital as well as all of the community hospitals in North Devon that now we've merged with our and East. And we've worked out that we have four real strategic objectives. We need to collaborate and work in partnership with bodies like yourself. We need to provide a place to work. We need to really look after our staff because their job is to look after all of you and our community. We need to recover our waiting lists, which is hard, as you probably hear in the news. It's challenged, and we need to innovate and continue to challenge ourselves to modernise the NHS. So those are our snapshot objectives right now, the position we're in at the moment. If I could just move on to, I've forgotten one last slide. I have just summarised for you where I think our main areas of working in partnership together are. People's health is only 20% of influenced by the NHS. The rest of it is our community. We really need a housing strategy. I was really interested in the minutes from your December meeting. You also think you need a housing strategy, and we're really ready to help in provide whatever data you need to help make that the strongest strategy possible, and lobby on the Devon and Torridge's behalf. Infrastructure is a really interesting one. Digital infrastructure, particularly but public transport. Those of you who've been looking at the news know that we are getting quite a lot of anger from our staff about car parking. You know, some of them are legitimate concerns. If we had public transport that worked, we wouldn't be having quite so much difficulty. So I could go on, but there's employment, environment, and the economy as well. We need all of this to sustain health services. You need all of this to sustain businesses and the environment. So I will stop talking. I'm really happy to take questions at the end, but I'm going to hand over to Sahara, who will talk you through the Our Future Hospital.
Well, Catherine's left me 2 minutes. We based that slide on the basis that you can read those up. I think what I'd like to do is just take this opportunity just to give you a very quick insight into where the programme for the new hospital development's at now. Because many of you will have read different bits or maybe listened to us talk. I know some people here came to the Lord Markham presentation. It's a very tricky place to be at the moment because the government intention, which was publicly expressed back in 2019, is taking longer to deliver than we might all have hoped. I think that's probably a summary. And with the intervention of some of the other variables, like the pandemic, the RAC hospitals, raising inflation, it's not been an easy time to run a massive building programme. We locally have to focus on what matters to us. So what we have done is tried as much as possible to work with the new hospital programme while they've been trying to work out how they're going to deliver this massive programme and focus on our local priorities. And those feed directly into what Catherine just talked about. So we need to house our staff. We need to ensure that we can sustain local services. We spent a year after the merger developing a joint clinical strategy. And what that basically said was local urgent and emergency care has to be delivered locally in North Devon, that's through NDDH, and that we would deliver care closer to home where we can in our communities, which has been our commitment, continuing to maintain and look at ways of growing services in the future and working with our primary care networks, who are an absolute partner in delivering care outside of the hospital itself. And then finally, obviously, elective care, recovering some of these waiting lists. All of that in the face of growing population. The original predictions we did in 2020-21 said we would run out of capacity by 27-28, and that's what I told all of you. It's a little bit worse than that. Probably going to run out in about 25-26 because the sheer impact of the pandemic on elective care, the delays it's introduced in people accessing care, and therefore the number of people who've toppled into crisis and need more urgent care means it's taking a number of years now to catch up on that backlog, not months. So all of that is the scenario against which we're working. So we've developed an offer which we're negotiating now with the new hospital programme. They have said we can have more money than they originally said. We can redevelop a lot more of our site, which is great news, but we don't want to do it all at once because we need to prioritise and focus. So our staff housing first and our critical estate, our theatres, our ICU, our women's and children's, our universal services, we want those built by 2030. And then we will happily continue to redevelop the site using the other monies, working with our community estate as well to make sure we deliver the most sustainable offer. But we think that's the key. And it took 10 slides to put that in the pack for you, but I thought this would be a better use of my 2 minutes of time. Really happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for that. Councillor Back, you've got your hand up first.
Sorry, Catherine, can I just ask you, you keep calling it the new hospital programme. Is it going to be a new hospital or is it going to be refurbishment on the existing sites? Thank you.
That sounds like a question for me. We actually use the word redevelopment, and the reason we do that is because we're not going to pull down all of the old buildings. We will replace a significant chunk. The new build, as we hypothecate it now, although we haven't done the designs yet, will encompass large chunks of our hospital care services, but we are hoping still to keep the main tower simply so we can maintain offices, admin, training, development and outpatient services still. So I can't call it a new hospital because that would be a new build on a new site, but I can call it a major redevelopment of our existing site.
Councillor, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was Catherine who spoke first. I'm a huge fan of preventative measures in community, and I was very interested in your statistic of 20%, 80%. I've worked a lot in the voluntary sector to get people moving, activity, etc. Over that time, I've come to realise that I feel there's an elephant in the room, which is diet. And as a strategy, I wonder, I might be being a bit too prescriptive in saying diet, but how that fits in with the NHS and all its partners is diet the elephant in the room? And maybe you could come back on that idea.
There are quite a few elephants, using your term, and we call them risky behaviours or modifiable behaviours. So the smoking and the alcohol, obesity is one of them. And I think the reason we get into this space is because we know clinician to patient has a far more influential influence on that person's behaviour than perhaps giving them a diet card or a recipe card or whatever. So we know we have a part to play. Now we tend, if you call that prevention, then maybe, but I think prevention in terms of some of this happens in childhood and happens with your peers and the way you are, your social situation. So I think we've all got a role in prevention actually, but no scientific research says that patients are far more influenced and will give up smoking and will eat healthier when the clinician takes the time to talk to them about it. So, and clinicians know that.
Yeah, guys, very quickly come back. Yeah, thank you for that answer. And you're right, it's not just prevention. But I think there's a narrative in the public that activity is the answer. I think that's an unfair one on a lot of people. And actually diet is the first answer and activity reinforces that. And I wonder whether I don't hear that message enough.
I think our experience shows that if you focus on what matters to me, the byproduct of seeing your family more or friends is that you have walked there or that you have gone out for a trip in the park. That's activity, but the point is they're doing the thing that makes them mentally healthy as well as physically healthy. And I don't think you can just say to everyone you must be healthier. I think you have to go with what do they want, what motivates people to live healthier lives and happier lives. And I think that's the key. And the voluntary sector the voluntary sector organisations that we work with take that real what matters to me approach. And I think we learn a lot from them because quite often we see people coming through our service again and again. I'm thinking of through our ED, A&E at North Devon, and we don't fix their problem because their problem is social and their problem is not something that we can physically fix with physical health intervention.
Councillor Leather had his hand up and then Councillor Lavelle.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested to hear you mentioning about housing. Is it a proposal that you're going to provide your own housing over in North Devon?
So there's a number.
And if so, how much housing were you looking for? And
Yeah.
is it for senior people who work in the health service now?
So initially, the first phase is focused primarily actually on the acute site itself. We have for a number of years, probably more than 40 now, had short-term residential accommodation, which serves, as you know, three purposes: visiting clinicians, short-term residences, incoming staff who need somewhere to bridge. That's what we're going to replace first of all. However, we are taking a business case through our boards, which looks more widely at how we can work with partners out in the public sector, the private sector, to provide more housing that has ring-fenced key worker accommodation so that we can start to bridge that gap that we see in the marketplace where there isn't short-term rentals for people who aren't yet in a position to be able to buy their own property. So a little bit of both, but the initial focus for us as an NHS provider has to be short-term accommodation for NHS staff.
Councillor Lavelle.
I was just interested, for me, like elephant in the room or whatever, is social care, because we hear a great deal about the problem. One of the problems for the NHS is, backing up because social care isn't in place. And the presentation, it was linking with various things. I didn't seen, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, and I apologise because it was a great presentation. To focus much on the social care aspect that is creating or not helping with the backlog for the NHS. And I just wondered if you were also liaising somehow with that.
Yeah, so daily, it's in the NHS Devon strategy about carers and social care. But operationally, we are liaising with social care daily because, we have patients that are ready to be discharged and we work with our colleagues to discharge them on time. You're right, there are sometimes delays, but it's got better recently. But, we still have Do we value this workforce enough? And I think I think, you know, everyone, I think it's a matter of public record that we need a social care strategy at a national policy level. We're doing what we can in the meantime.
Councillor Pennington and then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Chair.
Hopefully that'll be the last one.
I'd like to thank you for all your work you do and the hard you had. So thank you very much for everything, both at Exeter. Now we have to say Exeter as well as North Devon, and it's a bit hard for us up here. We have to travel to Exeter all the time, but thank you for all in both hospitals. Patient initiative follow-up.
Yeah.
A little bit concerning because my wife has worked in the health service before, and we've helped one or two do FaceTime to get treatment for cancers. What's going to happen to those patients who don't initiate their follow-up, and what safety measures are you going to put in place for those who don't have the technology or the understanding, given that we have an aging population, to actually get involved to do what you're asking us to do? What safety measures for those who slip through the net effectively?
I might have to come back to you. What are you?
I was going to say that, so, just to support Catherine, there is a transforming outpatients work stream in the hospital, which is looking at just this issue, because you can't have a one size fits all. You're absolutely right. And into the pandemic, we could see that. So whilst a lot of virtual consultations and so on took place, it was not for everybody. I have an 89-year-old mother. I can tell you where that's going to go and start with. So we absolutely have to operate a number of different channels for consulting with people and for working with them. That group is looking at how we safely run both the process of clinical triage to decide who is eligible to be somebody who can follow up themselves, and that's done in consultation with patients, not separately, but they're also looking at how they look at the different pathways, because not all pathways are suitable either. So I probably just want to reassure you, it's not our field of expertise, but the clinicians for whom it is are very focused on getting this right.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews, please.
Just wondered, I have a friend who lived in a different area to this, but they went to hospital in May, early May for 2 weeks, and they came out because of lack of social care on Christmas Eve. Could you assure me that that could not happen here?
No, no, because it might have happened, but you tend to plan discharges with people. And if they want to leave on Christmas Eve, they leave on Christmas Eve. If they want to leave at 4 in the morning and it's safe, they will leave at 4 in the morning. Do you know what I mean? So I think
he wanted to leave in May.
Oh, okay.
But there was no social care for him to leave.
Got it. Okay, sorry. Yes, I hadn't correlated the 2 days. Sorry, that is the long 2 weeks. I don't think there's anyone. I'll have to get back to you. I don't think there is anyone who has stayed that long in North Devon.
Good.
Very occasionally. You get very complex people. I'm not saying that about your friend, but occasionally they have the higher needs, and we have to wait for a placement somewhere else. But that sounds extreme.
Sorry, can I just add, just because we kind of bowled through the Our Future Hospital, if you go on the Royal Devon website, there is an Our Future Hospital email address. So if anyone's got any questions, or noting this goes on YouTube as a public record, if anybody wants to get in touch, please feel free.
Well, let Zara go first next.
Councillor Mrs. Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned one of the key challenges is the mental health issues across the whole population. We all know that straddles many, many different aspects of people's health. What is your connection, or have you got any community involvement with Devon County Council? Because I'm sure you know that we're starting up here to keep our link centre open in Bideford. And of course, the same is true in Ilfracombe and Barnstaple. And this is a community initiative that has been very, very helpful to mental health in our area, and has helped some people to prepare themselves to go back into work when they haven't been working for a long time. It seems that Devon County Council has some initiatives in the pipeline, but we don't know what they are, and they're being very, very coy about what is going to replace these very valuable and worthwhile link centres. So do you have any initiative or contact with them that will help to establish an improvement in the situation in mental health in our area?
Thank you. So as a stakeholder, we're briefed, obviously, by the Devon County Council team, and I think I'm right in saying, though I'm not too close in it, the consultation is still ongoing. And I think from our perspective, what we've heard and what we've made sure is that we've encouraged people who are going to be impacted by these proposals to make sure their voice is heard. And in particular, there's impacts on the children, vulnerable children, I think, within that as well. So we are a partner. We have no influence. We are able to submit our views to the consultation. But I don't have any insight. I'm afraid you'd have to ask Devon County Council about where they are in the stages of consultation. But you're absolutely right. Mental health is really important. I think the hypothesis of this consultation is how do you deliver it, and how do you deliver it to such a community like North Devon and Forage.
Right, thank you.
Right, well, thank you both ladies for that presentation, very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And moving forward, item 9 on your agenda is Southwest Water update, and is to receive a presentation from Southwest Water, Richard Price, Group Chief Engineer and Director, and Ian Lake, Head of Developer Services. Can I just say before we actually get this presentation going, Southwest Water are arranging a further presentation with Helen Smith, our planning manager, in this building at a date to be confirmed, hopefully in early March, and it'll be a meeting with North Devon Council and Torridge. So I'm sure we've probably got 1,001 questions that we'd like to bombard these gentlemen with, but they can't really go into specifics. The reason they're here tonight is, if you recall, Councillor Peter Christie asked the question with regard to planning, and the answer that Southwest Water appear to give each time there's a planning application goes in, particularly a substantial one. So over to you guys for the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Chairman, councillors. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and I think we're doing within the 10 minutes as well, and then my colleague Ian will take you through the slides, and you've all got a copy of the slides. And this is all focused on how we're strengthening our relationship and the planning process with your officers and with the planning committee. There's a session with the officers back in November. There's another one coming up with the officers, and then, as the chair has just described, we've got a deeper dive session with the planning committee coming up as well. So that's really good. And for us, it's, at Southwest Water, it's really important because we want to facilitate the growth in the region. We want to enable tourism, and at the same time, obviously, protect the wonderful environment that we live in. So that's really right at the heart of what we do. And you probably noticed as well that we've just submitted our business plan to our regulator Ofwat for the next 5 years, starting in 2025. That's more than doubling our investment up to 2.8 billion from 1.4 billion in this current 5-year period. So there's a massive amount of work going on. And we've engaged with many of our 3.5 million customers, and they've helped inform our business plan. And there are 4 key priorities in that plan. The first one, having sustainable, resilient and great water quality, drinking water quality. The second one, reducing storm overflows and pollution. The third one, championing net zero and promoting environmental gains with tree planting and so on, and reversing carbon emissions. And then the final one is making sure that our plan is affordable, importantly affordable for all of our customers. So there's a massive amount of work going on. So I'm going to get Ian to take you through the slides and say you've got them in your plan, and then we'll loop round for questions. So Ian, over to you.
Before we keep going, I want to apologise in advance. I just noticed the West Devon noticing. So those who haven't seen this now, I've made so far on the first slide. So I apologise for that. So if we have the first slide, could please, Tom, thank you. So apologies, slightly wordy slide, but what we're trying to do today is, as Richard said, just to focus really on the planning. We've got a lot of things we'd like to share with you as a council, and we'll certainly do that going forward. But we, as you're aware, aren't a statutory constitute for the planning process, but that doesn't mean that we don't engage in that process, and we always try to do that. We look at something like, so I've got a small team working with me as part of a wider team. We look at something like £30,000 applications a year. When we do that, we're looking at a number of things. So we're trying to understand whether our networks can support that new development. We've got some obligations as a business, as within the water industry to actually make sure our investment plans support that growth. So again, we need to make sure that our forward-looking investment plans continue to support that growth. We want to make sure that we continue to protect the environment. So anyone, obviously, you know, we've got some big challenges in the environmental space at the minute. We're working very hard on that. We're making some real good inroads in terms of making some fantastic improvements, but we've got an awful lot more we still need to do in that space. So we want to make sure that we can continue to do that. And then the last thing we look at is to make sure that our infrastructure, and whether that be a water main, whether it be a sewer, you know, is going to be protected from the development. So we're not going to be damaged during construction, or alternatively, our future maintenance is going to be limited in terms of access and going forward. As Richard said, you know, we've recognised following the feedback, and we obviously saw Councillor Christie's comments, you know, and that caused us and prompted us to just reflect in terms of the way that we were doing things internally. We've already started some work internally. I've held one workshop with a number of others to be done internally with a number of different departments across the business to really reflect in terms of how we assess planning applications, how we assess the future growth, and we'll continue to do that. And we're also very keen, you know, and hopefully this will be the start of a much stronger relationship with yourselves. We've also reached out to all the other planning authorities on the same basis to try and make sure that we strengthen those links. Thank you. So this is a very quick slide, and just a couple of examples really, but just to share with you, and these are all available on our website, so all these documents are available. So these are just a small example of some of our more strategic documentation. So we've got our drainage and wastewater management plans that looks in a strategic look ahead and undertakes a number of things. So it will look at growth, it will look at our environmental performance, it will link up our investment programs to ensure that we're targeting the right things. On the other side of things, in terms of water resources, and we're very aware of some of the challenges we faced at the end of last summer. We've got our draft, and it's only in draft at the minute because we're going through a consultation process with that. We've got our draft water resource management plan, which is a very similar thing around making sure that we've got, you know, sufficient water resources going forward to make sure that we continue to meet demand. And then there are some other more technical documents on there, so things like the stormwater pollution strategy. And as I say, they're all available on our websites. If you so would like to look at those. But just underline that very quickly in terms of strategic priority, not necessarily read through them all. You know, but we've got a water fit program. So our water fit program is around reducing CSO spills. So you've seen a lot of that in the press in terms of CSO spills. We're investing between now and 2025, £330 million in terms of reducing the average spills per location to 20 per year, or to below 20 per year. And that's not, you know, where we want to finish, but obviously we've got to do this in a joint approach. Moving on from that, we've got another £900 million earmarked up until 2030 to continue that journey, to really get to the point where we're heading to try and get down to below 10 spills per year by 2040. So DEFRA through the government set the industry a target of 2050. To get to that point, we are trying to outperform that by 10 years. We've accelerated our investment to make that happen. On the water resources side, as I say, it's around making sure that we've got not only the water resources, but also understand the impact that we've got. We take a lot of water from rivers in terms of soil, so we've got to understand how that impacts the environment to make sure we can do that. We've got a plan that joins that. So just very quickly, in terms of our approach. So, you know, under the current rules, we've got to say developers have a right to connect to the nearest sewer and the nearest water main, so they've got a right to do that. You know, obviously we as a statutory undertaker also have an obligation through our commitments to facilitate growth. So we've got to make sure that we work with developers, work with planning authorities, but also make sure our investment streams line up on that basis. Ultimately, it's for the developer to present the drainage strategy for their site to make sure that obviously it won't have a detrimental impact on the environment. But often we will engage, certainly with regards to the large and sort of national house builders, we'll often engage with them. We have key account relationships with them to make sure we can work with them to help them to try and develop some of those ideas before arguably they come to the planning process. But then it's up to us then. So where we've got these commitments, it's then up to us to make sure that our investment plans meet that. And effectively it's funded through an infrastructure charge. So developers will pay an infrastructure charge at the time of connection, and that goes towards making sure that we can invest in the networks and do all the things that we need to do to make you know, the capacity available. I said just now we look at circa 30,000, so we necessarily cover that. And we use an internal supply demand tool, so a tactical demand-based tool that we put the development into it and then give us some indications around whether or not we've got the infrastructure to support that. There are times where we flag up, you know, sort of an amber on that basis, and we will use. Then we've got some sort of specialist internal modelling teams And we'll also use external consultants to help us on that journey. So just in terms of just a few things, in terms of sort of things we're looking for. So ultimately, and we come back to the environmental performance of our sewerage networks. Generally speaking, they are driven by surface water. So when we have spills, not in all circumstances, but the majority of circumstances, driven by surface water, because that's what ultimately takes up capacity. Most of our networks have got the capacity required for foul drainage, but it's when we have the sort of wet weather events and storm events, the surface water, often a legacy surface water, will connect into our system, and that's what takes capacity. So consequently, while we talk about combined service, so when we talk about a foul sewer with surface water sewer, or arguably with combined sewer, which is a mix of the two, we've been for some time now ensuring that we keep those things separate. So we will separate on site. We will work with developers and such, trying to make sure they won't give them the okay to just put their surface water into our networks, because that's what creates system challenge. We have what we call the surface water hierarchy, and ultimately that's about getting water back into the ground if we can through infiltration. If we can't do that, we'll be looking to try and put it back to a water body, so a water course or a river. Ultimately, we'll be obviously trying to promote SUDS, and I know through the planning process that's a key requirement now in terms of sort of green solutions and nature-based solutions to some of these challenges. And then as a very last resort, we may agree to control discharge through a combined network. So I'm just very conscious of time. So as we said, so following the recent feedback, we've held some in terms of what we've done different. So we've held some internal workshops. I'm hoping you'll start to recognise already that some of the responses that we're making are more detailed now. I'm really challenging the team now to really sort of go a bit deeper in terms of the challenges, and then you will see that, and you'll certainly see that going forward. As Richard said, we held a workshop with your officers before Christmas. We've got another one lined up at the beginning of February to really start to gain an understanding of each other's needs and make sure that what we provide you is what we require going forward. We will be making sure we put on some standard requirements. So standard requirements, as I said just now, around surface water, making sure we've got efficiency challenges from a water resource perspective, because it's really important we do that. And in addition to that, we only have obligation to take the surface water from roofs and driveways. We don't have the responsibility for the highway drainage. So therefore, we are trying to work with highway authorities to try and sort of come up with almost functional solutions for them, if you like, because obviously, again, that's a bit of a challenge to us. And we've got a lot of things in place now with regards to SUDS adoption, and which recent legislation change to make that happen, but also some of the more innovative solutions that I was going to develop earlier this week, talking through some interesting ideas they've got around how they think they can get water back into the environment rather than up through the traditional routes. And in addition to that, sorry, I'll come to the next slide, which is the last slide. But in addition to that, we have got large programs of taking surface water out of our networks to make capacity for growth. So we'll either take it out as direct surface water, or alternatively out as what we know as infiltration. So therefore, it's coming in from the ground into the pipes, and we'll do that by sealing pipes, sealing systems to stop it from getting in on that basis. So just in terms of our next steps, so as we've said a couple of times now, we've previously engaged with you, we will continue to do that. This is another session lined up for 7th of February. We would like to come back, we're desperate to come back to share a lot of information with you, not just around the planning, but also around our future plans, some of the initiatives that we've already got ongoing, and we've got a session lined up, which we hope will be at the beginning of March for that to happen. And I'll be here alongside some other colleagues to make that happen. But there's a list of the things that I want to read them through that we're proposing to share with you at that process. Hopefully give you a little bit more insight in terms of some of the things that we've got going on. And then I think the last just point on here is around, we recognise, and we did recognise in reflection some of the comments that we had from the feedback that we had back, and we have started to do something about that to make our responsive to planning applications more informative, which ultimately will give you guys the opportunity to make some proper judgments on some of that.
Thank you both. Mr. Brenton was first.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the planning situation. What initiatives are you taking to get householders to actually separate stormwater from their sewage or domestic wastewater? Because Councillor Brenton and myself, we built two houses, one 25 years ago. It was a quite simple process to just put all the stormwater into a soakaway. Because I mean, as you know, Bideford sits on a almost vertical sedimentary rock structure, and it just drains away, no problem really. However, when we did our latest one, which was about, when that, 3 years ago, yeah, about 3. It wasn't easy then, not at all. Building control officer said to me, best thing you can do is connect it all into the sewer. That's the easiest thing to do, and we did. However, since then, I've now chopped it all off, you know, it's now no longer going down. But there's an opportunity there to get rid of a lot of roof water and driveway water, if only householders had the incentive. I haven't applied to Satisfactory yet to get a rebate on my water bill, but I understand that was the case because we got it originally, and it is still the case because otherwise I wasted my money. But I mean, really, I do feel that there is opportunity. Part of the big developers have got to sort themselves out with their sewage systems. At least for private individuals, there's a lot of properties around that would be very suitable for soakways.
So thank you. That's a really good question. I think there's probably a couple of things just in terms of response. So the first one is in terms of the reduction, and you're absolutely right, that is in place. So yes, please give us a call through the building centre. I think your point is a well made one. It's the difficult one in terms of how we manage it on that basis. We do need to get closer to the building control officers because it's an interesting, concept and almost that, just put into the sewer. Because the last thing that any of us want is that basis. What we also see quite a lot of, and again, this is something we want to get closer to yourselves on, is around parking, for example, whereby we see a lot of people converting what was a lawn into a widened parking area, taking that, increasing the area and then just tapping it into the system, which causes us some problems. It's what we know as urban creep. So we build that arguably into our models, but ultimately we'd like to try and get it out in the first instance. And therefore, the challenge is there. We do need to get closer to you guys on the ground to understand how that comes in. It's an interesting concept, and it's not one I've necessarily got an answer to, but it's certainly something I'd be happy to take away as to whether there is an incentive for us, over and beyond the building bit, to look at. But sort of standing here at the minute, it's not necessarily something I consider. But thank you for the points. I really want to make.
Councillor Thomas first.
Just wondering, you talked about dealing with sort of 30,000 plus planning applications and, looking at what your network can support. How often would you say the South West Water actually object to planning proposals, particularly to the larger ones?
Well, I think we looked, we did a bit of a review of this before Christmas, obviously, when we were doing the reflection, and it's somewhere between about 8 and 10% of where we will give substantive response, but almost not objections, because we won't tend to object, but what we will do is we'll raise those concerns. It's not for us to determine that. What we will always try and do, to help the growth agenda, recognising, and it's interesting talking to listen to the NHS staff here talking about the need for housing, so we recognise our importance in that role. But it's somewhere between about 8 and 10% in terms of the ones that we can go back with. What we're now going to try and be doing is what we found is that there is a large proportion of those that get a fairly bland if response at all, and we need to close that gap, which is absolutely a priority for us. So I've got some challenges internally to make that happen, but and as you can imagine, my team are understanding, trying to work out how they can do that. But that's our challenge. We will definitely be doing that.
Councillor Piper, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, chaps, for coming and giving the presentation. I just wanted to say a congratulations, I think, to Councillor Christie, because his motion some time ago seems to have, it might not have been just that, but it seems to have instigated quite a response and encouraged increased liaison with local authority planning departments. It's good to hear. I would say your surface water hierarchy system is quite commendable, and obviously does tackle new build, but as Councillor Brenton alluded to, I guess it's the existing stock that's a major problem. My main concern is probably what were you doing before? This all seems staggeringly late in the context of an infrastructure that obviously couldn't deal with what we had or what was coming. And I say that because I suppose I'll cut to the chase. The public look at it and say all they can see is water companies openly admitting to being woefully inadequate with the protection of our natural resources, having to admit to cover-ups, and with the context of shareholders taking lots and lots of money. And I know it's a simplistic view, but I think as a lowly councillor, I'd be wrong not to raise the things that I think all of Joe Public think. But it sounds like you are making strides to improve things, but I'd stress that the public are pretty angry with South West Water. And I hope more radical approaches are taken than the money is. But you mentioned the word affordable, making these, doing what you're saying you're going to do, but it has to be affordable. I think affordability is not important to the public. It's, you've got to get the job done. Thanks.
Yeah, your point is well made, and you know, as our chief exec would say, any pollution incident, any overflow is one too many. So we're really focused on that, and I think we've got to also be better at telling the story. If I think about my career in the water industry, I've spent the last 30 years cleaning up southern England. So back 30 years ago, a lot of the discharges around the coast were crude discharges, weren't treated at all. So as a business, we've invested over £13 billion putting in secondary treatment right around the coast. And it's really good to see that in the southwest, we've got 860 miles of coastline. We've got a third of the country's. And for the last 3 years, all of those bathing beaches have reached the bathing water standard, which is excellent. And 99% of them are in the good and excellent category. However, you're absolutely right. We've got to work harder on storm overflows. That's why our business plan is doubling in value to 2.8 billion. And a third of that business plan is all focused on storm overflows. So we want to get hand in glove with your officers and planning committees, as well as make those investments and meet the expectation that is absolutely right and out there.
Thank you. Councillor Hackett first, and then it was Councillor Lavelle.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question that relates to Sheepwash and Buckland Brewer, principally. Both are village locations. Both have received a very substantial amount of planning in the last 5 years and will increase in the future. In the case of Sheepwash, it's going to have about a 50% uplift in housing, and Buckland Brewer has 5 major sites. Now, in the case of Sheepwash, the parish council were notified at the beginning of this century, millennium, that there's perhaps 5 years additional capacity to build within the area of Sheepwash. I presume due to the size of the water treatment plant, or it might be to the main 4-inch diameter sewer in the village, in the main street. How can they just refer to standing advice? How can you refer to just standing advice going forward when there was concern about minimal building 20 odd years ago? Thank you.
So, just pick on that. So,
Briefly, if you could.
I'm absolutely apologies. I'm not familiar with the particular areas. I'm more than happy to take them away. And we did speak to Tom around the ability for queries, particularly on a more localised level, on that basis. So I think we need to check that away, but I'd be more than happy to look at that for you.
Thank you.
Before I come on to you, Councillor Lavelle, the March meeting, we all have an opportunity to put our questions in writing, an email form or however to these gentlemen at that planning meeting, of which everyone obviously is welcome to attend. So, Councillor Lavelle.
Okay, just a quick one, and the answer might need to come.
Sorry, can you just speak up a bit?
Sorry, you said how much money was going to be spent on these, improving things. Could I just ask how much that is in relation to South West Water's profits? Because the public here, and I may be misinformed, that large shareholder profits, dividends are paid out to shareholders and not much has been going on improving in the infrastructure. And I just wonder if, and I don't want to be rude and suggest that greenwashing is going on, but saying, 330 million, I don't know, in the context of South West Water and South West Water's profits and South West Water's of customers, is that huge? Should we be impressed? Should we say, wow, we can sit down and not worry anymore? Just asking.
No, it's a very, very good question. And I think these probably whole wave I could come back and try and bring that to life for you. I mean, the first thing is that our group is a publicly listed company, so it's one of 3 water companies on the stock market, and we're probably one of the most financially resilient. We have low gearing, so we're not highly geared, low gearing, and through our industry leading customer share safe system, 1 in 14 of our customers are shareholders. So our scrutiny that we put round being PLC, our dividend policies and boards and the way we govern the business is really transparent. So I definitely invite councillors to have a look at those accounts, and you'll see that, you know, this substantial uptick in investment is really important. At the same time, making sure we've got a really financially resilient business.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews, sorry, no, it's Councillor Codhunker, sorry.
Very quick, just to say, do we have a date, did I miss it? Do we have a date for this meeting?
So I said earlier today, talking to Helen Smith, it's the 1st of March. I think it'll be an AM meeting. I think it's the latest. We sort of literally penciled that in this afternoon. So the plan, I think 1st of March in the morning is the only detail I've got at the minute.
As soon as we know, we'll email it out.
Hot off the press. Councillor Codhunker.
Thank you. You talked about reducing the average number of spills to 20 per location per year by 2025. But you didn't say what that's in comparison to. So at present, how many do we have, and how many locations is that across Torrid, please? Because I expect that's quite high. I don't really understand. You give a number, but it's not in comparison to anything.
Yeah, so I think the facts and figures are there. So I said this loosely in terms of overarching numbers. So we've already made some significant improvements. So I think we were not necessarily against Torrid, but I think we've reduced the spills from something like 38 down to about 28 already. So we've already made that investment to make that happen. In terms of the number of spills within Torrid, I need to come back to you, and we can get that information. I just need to come back to you to speak to somebody that's got that data. But what we'll do is when we come back in March, we'll make sure that's included within the presentation pack.
Thank you. You've got Councillor Back and Councillor Pennington.
Thank you.
That's,
Chair.
yeah.
I've been asked not to ask, specific questions about spills, outage or outrage, as we call them in Westford Home. I get a lot of questions from local residents as a Westford Home board member about what's happening to our waterways and coastal waters. We seem to have no end of spillages at Westford Home, and people want answers to this. So I won't question now, but I welcome the opportunity of putting that inviting to you for the March meeting.
So we'll make sure we cover spills in general, but if there are specific locations, more than happy to take that separately and
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your talk. Last Monday, in the Financial Times, there was a report about the Environment Agency saying that you miscalculated the drought in 2022. Can you reassure us that the calculations were correct and that we are not going to be short of water for the future? Thank you.
I guess I need to be a little bit careful because obviously that discussion is still going on in terms of that disclosure. In terms of, and I guess I can speak from a personal level. So at the end of last summer, I was in my control room, pulled in as part of a small team to make sure that we obviously make sure that we maintain services and supplies to all of our customers, which we successfully managed to do. From a water resource perspective, there were some challenges, as you know, so we had some challenges in Beaufort. We also started some challenges in Colliford, which is our strategic reservoir for Cornwall. And we've already invested a significant amount of money delivering projects that allow us now to have greater resilience about how we move water around the regions. So you know, I stand in the numbers. So if you look at the reservoir levels, if we're looking wrong, we have been helped by the inclement weather. You know, but our reservoir levels are significantly higher than they were at the same time last year, and therefore we are confident that we will continue to supply wholesome water to all of our customers. However, you know, and you'll see from the water resource management plan, you know, that's up to 2050 look ahead to make sure that we've got all of the things that we need. So you may be aware, albeit in Cornwall, that we're looking at a desalination plant, recognising we've got a coastline, you know, in the southwest that we can take advantage of. It brings its own challenges in terms of treating that water, but you know, we are addressing that as we speak. So we've got significant investment lined up, not only now, but also going forward to make sure that we can maintain our services going forward.
Thank you for your reply. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mrs. Brenton, and then the last speaker is going to be Councillor Lever.
Yes, I must say, I was rather surprised to hear that you were congratulating yourselves on how well you were doing reducing the pollution. When we hear of the continuous pollution issues living in South Devon, one just a couple of weeks ago. The issue is about desalinization, really. Are there any plans for us to have anything like that up there? Because obviously we're nearly a bit of a just scrape beyond the postpipe ban, or most of it, back in the summer. But I can remember when we had standpipes in the streets in Bideford before your time, or before privatisation. But even so, it's still rationing water in the summer. Are there any plans for desalinization up in this area? And what is the method of coping with purity of water if you don't have clean water in the sea because of some kind of sewage issue?
So, I think building on the last question and your question, I think it's fair to say that Ian personally led lots of projects last year to increase the resilience of the water supply in Devon and Cornwall. So I think with the projects Ian's led coming in Quarries, Hawkestor and others, we've increased the supply in Devon by 12%, Cornwall by 25%. And we're currently, as many in the room will know, doing a desalination solution for Cornwall, which will boost supply by another 4 to 5%. But in our business plan, what we're also proposing to develop is a new reservoir scheme at Cheddar 2 up in Bristol. And then with resilience through the network and displacement through Wessex Water, boost supplies into Devon. So our water resources management plan, which is a presentation in its own right, absolutely considers providing sustainable water 25 years into the future.
Thank you. Councillor Leather, you're the last speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm on the Torres District Council's Plan Committee. And over the years, Councillor Christie and myself have mentioned very often that we never get any information from South West Water on planning application. Oh yeah, providing the size of the pipe being connected in from a development corresponds with what's there, fine. That's about all we ever get. We did write, the Plans Committee had a letter sent to South West Water asking about the capacity of the former treatment plant, which takes all the waste from this area and Barnstaple and some from Barnstaple. The reply we had back was, that is commercially sensitive information. You've got no competitor here. How is that commercially sensitive? What we wanted to know was, all these developments coming online, and they're on the go present in the area. We wanted to know how many years capacity is there? 5, 10, 20 years? And we should have had an answer to that, we didn't get it. And that just rubs us up the wrong way.
I completely understand that, and obviously apologies for that. I don't understand that. I'm standing here now, I don't understand that response, and I will go back and ask the questions when I arrive back in the office tomorrow. Because you're right, we should be able to provide that data and information to you. So please leave that with me, I'll make some advice.
Thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for that detailed report. Thank you very much. And I think I'd like to echo what Councillor Piper said. Thank you very much to Councillor Christie for highlighting this issue and bringing it forward. Because without his persistence, I don't think this meeting would have been quite as interesting. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, item 10 is the Shared Prosperity Fund Investment Plan for 24-25, pages 22 to 32. I believe Christian can come forward with this. Thank you.
Right, what we left. Good evening, councillors. I'm sure you've been writing. I'm going to try and keep this nice and brief in terms of an intro. For many people, it's already been a long day after CNR this morning. I know there's lots of items still to come on the agenda. I think that since we brought the Shared Prosperity Fund investment plan back in July 2022, there's been a significant amount of change. And what we're now looking to focus on with this review is actually focusing on delivery. We know that since then we've had the £15.6 million funding award for the Appledore Clean Maritime Innovation Centre, which has changed a significant amount of where our efforts need to be and where we're aware those opportunities will be moving forward. We've had the Bideford Regeneration Board, the Great Torrington Regeneration Strategy. We have the Northern Devon Culture Strategy, and it's now about also prepping and using this funding for opportunities ahead, such as Learning Up Partnership, such as a forthcoming cultural development fund that we're being encouraged to prepare for by the Arts Council, and making sure, therefore, that this funding actually has a far larger legacy, especially at a time when there's an enormous amount on, but again, being honest, very limited capacity to make sure that we're targeted rather than scattergunning all over the place. So it's a case now of hopefully moving forward and delivering the items that are listed in there, all of which are kind of approved already in various different guises, and creating some positive stories from the work. Thank you.
No questions? Councillor Hames?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting confused, but there's an item here, E7, support for active travel enhancement. And then there's some tables showing.
Which page are you on?
Oh, sorry, page 23. In the boxes there, then later revision boxes, E7 doesn't appear. I was wondering if Chris could explain that, please.
Always nice to get down to those sort of ones straight away. I think there's, you know, to do with this, I'm looking at different sort of page numbering to US pronunciation.
Second page of the report.
Yeah. Okay. So kind of if you look at the top of page 23, what that's indicating is that those are the items approved in 2022. Oh. What we've then looked to do, I don't believe that E7 featured within the investment plan for 24-25, which is why it then didn't come up within the listings included for the revisions ahead.
Oh, that's somewhat disappointing, thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Brent, you got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's page 26, E33, support for economically inactive people. No figures for economically inactive people, and the strand does not align with the objective of improving employment and skill quality. I'm not quite sure what that means. Does it mean you just don't have the figures, or there aren't any economically inactive, i.e. unemployed people in this community?
Strangely, and this is something that we do work on with the Department for Work and Pensions, the greater issue that DWP actually tells me is issues of underemployment and people having multiple roles. And that is often generated from some of those kind of lower skills, seasonal roles where people have to dart between different jobs. Again, though, coming back to where we have the opportunities and where we have strands of work that actually have been kind of approved by councillors kind of in sort of various different forms already, is making sure that actually we can now deliver on those. What we cannot do, I wish I could, is solve every single problem. There is unemployment, but where we've been tasked sort of with pushing is actually grow the quality of jobs that are out there, grow the scale of good quality, particular kind of focused on areas such as net zero within blue and green economies moving forward, jobs, to mean that actually we're addressing all of these issues over the longer term, rather than just creating short-term solutions now. But I'm absolutely not saying there's no unemployment, but it's just a case of making sure that we can be looking at where we can have maximum impact right now with work streams that are underway.
But can I just clarify? So basically you're saying it's just not very good employment, sort of. Yeah. And
You know that we
surely
look
we
at-
do need support for that then, because we all know that we have a lower than average skills base. So I find it really a bit contradictory, really. you're not, saying it doesn't align with your objective, really.
I think when you look at all of these things, we could make everything align.
Big issue.
Oh. When you're talking about one of the districts in the council, as highlighted by Levelling Up, sorry, district in the country, as highlighted by Levelling Up Partnership, with lowest average earnings, with serious challenges around competitiveness, we are fully and acutely aware of the kind of array of kind of interlocked challenges. This is why we're trying to push down certain lines. But there's not one kind of magic solution to any of these problems. I hope this way by making the most of these funding streams and by attracting other funding streams in to help deliver on that longer term, that we will make progress across all of them.
Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris, for easily understandable report. It's a subject that I feel like I've come into as a new councillor, trying to learn quickly, but the report seemed pretty straightforward, and it's about delivering what is deliverable, getting on with things, which I like. I'd also just like to take the opportunity to thank officers for putting time and effort into the project in Holsworthy, Manor offices. Holsworthy has got its act together a little bit, maybe, to highlight a specific area that we can do something in. You know, we haven't got a wider regeneration board like Biddeford and Torrington, and maybe that makes things simpler. But we're also thankful to be following in their footsteps. And a case in point being, I actually took the time to go to the Castle Hill Work Hub to see what good work's been done there, and how that's something that Holsworthy can aspire to. And I say slightly tongue in cheek that I see Torrington Work Hub and Holsworthy's Manor offices are in the same bracket, with the same capital expenditure. Obviously, with them so far ahead of us, I hope a good chunk of that will be going to the Manor offices. When I look around, I know I'm quite surrounded by Torrington people, so I'll shut up now. But thank you.
Councillor Hames, you want to come back?
Sorry, just follow up on that active travel thing. If it's not in this boxes later on as being taken out, is it not possible to put it in back in and give the reasons for why you haven't included it?
The first thing I will say, Councillor Hames, is there still remains an active travel budget from 22, 23, 23, 24. That's I know the working group have been looking to spend, so that has been sat kind of there. That's from the Shared Prosperity Fund's investment plan. So there is still money there for the active travel group to spend.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councillor James, would you like to want to speak? I just want to propose.
No, I'm quite happy to propose the recommendations.
Okay, someone else second that? Yep. Seconded by Councillor Locke.
Yeah.
All in favour, please show. Unanimous, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Okay, item 11 on your agenda is council tax legislation changes, second homes, pages 33 to 45 on your agenda. And Gordon is going to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So item 11 details two particular changes to the operation of council tax. The first one is the time period of which the 100% premium is introduced on empty properties. And the second one is introducing a 100% premium on second homeowners. This is the second time this paper essentially has been before you all. The first time was back in October. This has had to be represented because of the delays in the original legislation received the Royal Assent. Now, the purpose behind this legislation is to bring more homes back into use and to convert more second homes into primary residences. In a sense, then, it's to meet some of the dysfunctions of the existing housing market. If you notice the table on page 34, This shows, so the middle table this is, where it says theoretical additional income. This describes the potential additional funds available to us to meet some of those challenges within the housing market. So you can see that just within Forage, that's over £2 million. And of course, across the county of Devon, you can multiply that significantly. Members will also be aware that we already put in significant amounts of money to meet some of those challenges. For example, within temporary accommodation, where we currently spend over £1 million a year. But thank you, Chair. This is about essentially bringing more homes back into use, converting more second homes into primary residence, and to provide additional funds to meet some of the spoken to the housing market.
Seems win-win to me.
Move a recommendation, Chair.
You proposing it? Seconded by Councillor Newton. All in favour, please show. Unanimous. Thank you. Item 12, Constitution update, pages 46 and 76. I believe Stacey is going to present the report. Thank you.
Chair, so again, this is a technicality really. In 2019, we had a management restructure on a temporary basis, and then that was made permanent with the different departments being divided between the senior managers. We always meant to update the constitution, but then COVID hit. So it's just to actively reflect the departments that are under the relevant senior managers. Effectively ended up with Sean having nothing underneath him, but in practice, in everyday practice, he has. So it's just to record that, put housing under me, and yeah, to ensure as head of communities in place, he has planning, building and control, etc. underneath him.
Councillor James.
Happy to move the recommendation.
Happy to second it from the chair. All in favour, please show. Unanimous again. Thank you. Item 13 is the half-year treasury management, pages 77 to 85. All together, is that okay?
Thank you, Chair. So item 13 just gives the council the gives us the opportunity to report back to full council on the operation of the treasury management policy. You'll notice that the appendix details the policy that was previously agreed by members. So apologies if some of the wording is slightly historic, like for example, referring to the Environment Centre. But this was the policy that was agreed, and the purpose of the paper is to show our compliance with it. The main body of the paper also details some of the key pressures and some of the key dependencies of it. So, for example, it describes the movement in interest rates in recent years and months, and it also describes our potential income from interest in this year. And members will get an update from PBR3, of course, as well in that regard. So, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to report that we comply with the policy and there's been breaches of policy.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll move that. Sorry, Councillor Hames. Ethical investments.
Yeah, you got it. Your predecessor used to section out the ethical investment bid for investments. I can't see it on this report. Can you just tell us what his position is, please, given that interest rates have gone up considerably? Well, I hope that there will be an earning, some sort of allocation to ethical investments by now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Page 85 shows our list of current investments. So you've got that details there, and it also describes our ethical investment policy. So every time we do look to invest cash out, we do see if there are any institutions that would confirm. There hasn't yet been.
Well, the box showing the investments or these funds that we used to have something actually sort of specifying which fund we could have investments in. I think it seems slightly different from what we used to get. So I can't identify an investment in this list, or have I missed something? I think we used to have something in Barclays and Something like that.
Yeah, I'm not aware that there's anything being presented now that's different to what's being presented previously.
So we haven't gotten the ethical investments at the moment. I'm not sure.
No, not at the moment, no. We do always look to see if we do scan the market whenever we lend out cash.
This is because it doesn't comply with the regulations, is that right?
It's part of the regulations, it's part of our internal policy, because we've said that we're not going to forego more than 20 basis points for every £1 million that we lend out as an operation of Seacon Green.
We still haven't reached that.
No.
Perhaps I can discuss it with you further.
I was just going to second your.
Thank you.
Recommendation.
Okay, well, I've proposed it, it's been seconded, all in favour, please show. Unanimous again, thank you. Moving swiftly on to item 14, polling district and polling places review for 23, that's pages 86 to 95. Steve?
Thanks, Chair. So every 4 years, we are required to undertake a review of our polling districts and polling places. And this report summarises the results of that review. We undertook a period of consultation between 21st of November 23 and closed on the 2nd of January 24. There were 2 responses to that consultation received. One from a Great Torrington resident who expressed the opinion that polling stations are okay, and one from Councillor Leather, which flagged up anonymously, which has since been corrected. Chair. So the list of polling stations and polling places are listed in Appendix B.
Thank you. Hello, Councillor Leather?
Yeah, just briefly, thanks for putting North Dean back where it should have been all along. The only thing is the register I picked up the other day still got North Dean Bideford, it says. Why is that? I don't know. It says North Dean Bideford. It's in Northern.
Yeah, we can take a look at that for you, Chris.
Thanks,
Yeah, it's moved to the northern.
Okay.
I'll move the recommendation.
I'll second it from the chair. All in favour, please show. Unanimous, thank you. Okay, item 15 is to answer questions submitted under procedural rule A9. And we've got one question received from Councillor Brenton, Councillor Andy Brenton. This is Brenton.
Right, thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, the second time I've asked this question, I don't seem to be able to get an answer to it. Yet it's such a simple question. It's, do the 36 elected members of this council have any input into the configuration of these? Now, I'm not talking about the software application. I'm talking about things like archiving. For instance, it's very difficult to get any information about previous full council meetings beyond May this year. And I would like to find some of that out. Of course, I could go down to the council and move through all written records. But I thought that's what this was going to be avoiding. It is best practice for when a substantial group of people who are employed in an organisation and have a reasonable amount of status, they may not be, well, I don't know, at one time the council was the real reason why this was here, but maybe that's not the case anymore. But that they actually did have some input into the way things worked. And it seems to me that these have quite a cumbersome programme in many aspects. And I'm sure that a working group could come up with some of the hiccups and remove them. And so that was my question. I'm reading the answer and I'm taking that as a no. But I'm not sure because I didn't ask about the history and I didn't criticise the fact that we have these iPads, which seem to be what the implication is. I was just asking whether a small group of this 36-member council could highlight either hiccups in the system or improvements, because there's some very clever people here, much cleverer than me, And I'm not even suggesting that I should be on this group as it was ever formed. But, you know, and I'm sure they could improve the situation somewhat. And so that was my question, and I don't understand why it can't be answered.
I think
Really, but it has apparently been, I'm taking it as a no. So there's no input from councillors into this thing. We just use it, it's imposed on it, and we have to put that and step up. Well, it's not very good, it's not best practice.
Can I just ask around the room, are there any other councillors that have a particular issue with the way that the iPad system works, or the way that it operates?
Yeah.
Yes, answer all those that do have a particular issue with it.
And Councillor James, you put your hand up. I've seen you had an officer help you
Well-
out many a time, and loads of others as well. Come on, be honest.
If he wants to put his hand up, he certainly will. So there appears to be a number. Tom, you're one of our wizards on this. Surely, if there is an issue, can't anyone that has difficulty in accessing information, as Councillor Brenton suggesting, can't they come down, sit in your office with you and one of the other officers, and just give a bit of one-to-one tuition to actually sort the problem out?
Yes, with my team and also the IT team.
I would have thought it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's not what I'm saying.
You've got an answer to your question. No, we don't have a specific input, but I would imagine if you're anything like me, I'm a bit of a dinosaur on the computers. And I think, you know, if we've got the necessary expertise to show us exactly how to overcome the problems that we've got, that would probably do it.
I just wanted to say, I don't feel that I have a situation that needs tuition. My understanding of what Councillor Brenton is saying is that she feels that there could be some things that make the use of the iPad easier for us.
Yeah.
And I think that is true. I think that we have a barrage of emails every day from external companies offering calls. I mean, that's just one thing I think of right now. And I'm thinking, is there anything that we could do to improve that so that we're not wading through all of these things and we can come to the, and you know, I don't know how far the stuff on ModGov goes back, but I've never tried to go back to a historic minutes or decisions, for example. But if that is an issue, then could we come up with a way of communicating and improving? If we're not asking people regularly, is there something that you think that we could do to make this better? I don't think it's about tuition. I think it's about just making it more intuitive for what we're trying to do.
Tom, you've got that. Can you arrange a meeting and then send the invites out to all councillors with the time and date so that anyone can come down and they can talk about the issues and hopefully come to a resolution. I agree with the emails that you get from outside bodies, and your advice to me is don't open anything that isn't coming from Tories, and that's tend to be what I do. So you will.
I'll be in contact.
Chair, just to follow on from that, that is a fundamental question. Because when our residents email us, that is from outside Tory.
Well, I answered them, obviously, if it's from a private individual. But we
that's
get
where the danger lies, because I get emails from people proposing to be somebody when they are not, and we have to be very, very careful.
But we get lots of emails with these, almost like a yellow box on the top, and it's from some government department. Yeah, exactly.
Several times, so your email was not email.
That's what happens when you get hacked. Okay, item 16, we have no petitions. So item 17, one notice of motion has been received from Councillor Mrs. Annie Brenton. And the motion proposes that TDC adopts the LGA model councillor code of conduct. The Chair of Standards, Councillor Back, has agreed that this will be an item on the standards agenda for the meeting on the 28th of February. Members are unable to adopt a new policy without a report being presented to a formal committee. So I would suggest that once it's been to standards and you come up with a recommendation and we'll then come back with a view to adopting it.
Yeah.
But I take the sentiment, I think we should do, yeah.
That's fine.
Councillor Brenton, did
Under
you?
the Constitution, I have the right to propose this motion.
No, I haven't suggested you haven't, I'm just making a statement
We've
now.
done all this frustrating before. Anyway, obviously, this is the second time of proposing this. And actually, it's even more germane and important now, because the local government proposals, the local government model code of conduct deals with issues that we haven't got in our present code of conduct, particularly respect of other councillors, which we had an incident of last month. And that you don't make personal remarks about other councillors, and you don't cause them offence. That's quite important, I think. And so that's one of the things that we need to have, why we need to have this. But the other thing is because it's much more updated than our code of conduct. It deals with face-to-face meetings, online telephone or telephone meetings on Zoom, written communication, verbal communication or non-verbal communication. And also, most importantly, because I know that the chair did remember that he was on YouTube this time, but he actually said something that went on YouTube that I was very offended by last meeting. In electronic and social media communication, posts, statements and comments on the media. Now, there's an awful lot more in here about the standards that council should observe. Horwich had a long-running situation only quite recently, and I know this because the person concerned used to phone up my husband, and if he wasn't there and I answered the phone, he'd tell me all about it. That's how I know about it. And it, you know, really, it was clear that there wasn't a clarity about what council conduct should be. So this is an important document, and we should adopt it. We should treat everybody with respect, and we shouldn't compromise the authority of anyone who works for or on behalf of the local authority. There's loads of stuff in here that actually isn't on our code of conduct, but it's very concise, actually, that's it. So it's not as if we're adopting a 500-page document or anything. And actually, the previous situation where there was no respect for the Constitution, there was no respect for the view of the standards of Closely Council and rules of debate, only proves to me that we do need this, because the people involved were both, one was an experienced councillor and the other was somebody who'd been a lay member on the Standards Committee for heaven knows how long. And yet they did not obey the governance rules. They didn't obey the Constitution. So don't tell me we don't need this, because we do. I propose this is adopted now at this council.
I second it. Want to speak on it, Chair?
Sorry, Councillor Brennan, what was that?
Yeah, I second it, and I want to speak on it. We need to clear this up, and we need to do it tonight. I hear what you say about the Standards Board. The Standards Committee are not balanced. They don't have the constitutional right to decide this. Every member is affected by the Code of Conduct. We should all take a vote on it. We should all sign up to it. That's the truth of the matter. Now, if that means suspension of standing orders, then I would move that. It's up to you, Chair. Do you think it requires that or no? Because really, we could decide this now at this meeting.
Well, I think the point that I made a few minutes ago, and I'm actually in agreement with what it is you're proposing in theory, but it hasn't yet been discussed by the Standards Committee. I hear what you're saying, and when it has been discussed and recommended by the Standards Committee, no doubt it'll come back and it will probably be adopted.
I don't see the point of doing it. Why should it be discussed by the Standards Board?
Well,
it's a very limited group of people who are actually, as I say, they're not balanced politically. They could come up with a decision which doesn't reflect the whole view of the council. No, we should be deciding. This whole council should decide it, and they can do it now. It's an LGA thing, for heaven's sakes. It's not mystery stuff here. This is straightforward, the code of conduct, and I don't see why we has to shove it off to the standards board. What is the purpose of that?
Well, okay, well, you're proposing it, councillor Brenton, it's been in second, sorry.
Point of order, Chair.
I was just going to take it to the vote, that's all.
Just a point of order.
Yeah.
We're being asked to discuss and approve something that hasn't appeared on the agenda. And without going through it and having due reflection on our individual positions, I don't think we can decide this tonight. And I'd be much happier that it went through the Standards Committee.
Councillor Paddington?
Chair, I mean, I've got the conduct in front of me. Part 5, chapter 1. I put it in this straight, it comes up, it's here, it's before my eyes. I've already adopted it, haven't I, or have I not? I can be disrespectful now because I haven't adopted it. Surely we have adopted it. And it's on the Constitution already, it's already in the Constitution. Part 5, chapter 1, as I've got it, but.
Let me just bring Stacey in for a second and then councillor Newton can.
I think all points obviously that have been made tonight are valid. But when we're talking about the Constitution, full council delegates certain responsibilities down to certain committees. Standards is one of these delegations. Now it will come back to full council once standards have made a recommendation. So it'll ultimately be up to full council to make that decision. But that will be a full report and with the code of conduct. Nothing against the model code of conduct. It's already been discussed with the chair. It is on the standards agenda. But the point is, yes, we do already have respect within our code of conduct. All codes of conduct are based on the Nolan principles, the 7 Nolan principles. The LGA one, it's a good code. It expands ours a little, but it doesn't fundamentally change where we are. But I do think it's wrong for 2 reasons. One, because this has been delegated down to standards already and standards haven't considered it. And 2, because as Councillor Hackett has just said, there is no report in front of members and members are being asked to adopt something that they haven't considered. So I think it's on the next standards agenda in February. Standards will review it, discuss it, and then it will come back to full council to make an ultimate decision on whether they want to adopt the code or not.
Chair, on a point of order, and that is that if that is what is being proposed, that needs to be voted on. You can't just shove it off to the standards. This comes up to they have to make a decision that that's the progress that they wish to make, because that wasn't done last time either.
I just to say that the Constitution already says that this is within standards jurisdiction. It's like circumventing a committee to go to full council, and that's what would be happening here.
Councillor Newton?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think there's no immediate panic or rush. For goodness sake, let's not be bounced into something. There's a lot of people around this table or this forum who actually would like to hear or see in more detail. We have a perfectly well-formed committee whose job is to look at those things. They don't make a decision. They just go into it in more detail, which any of us can attend if we want to, and then they bring it back to us with recommendations. We will still make that decision ultimately. So I don't think we should be pushed. And thirdly, on our rules of procedure, I think as a notice of motion, we shouldn't be debating this anyhow. It should only be the proposer and seconder. And this should not be going forward without proper debate, which we can do when the Standards Committee have made their recommendations and bring them to us in a proper, measured way.
Thank you, Councillor. But I don't see that the notice of motion is going to be withdrawn, but it's being proposed and it's being seconded. So let's take it straight to the vote whether we're going to support Councillor Brenton's motion. All those in support.
Also, if it's going to standards, this notice of motion, and which is what you're saying, then it has to have an amendment. And I have to agree with that amendment. A61, it must be voted on after proposal and seconding. If an amendment to a motion is proposed, it must be carried by a vote to approve that amendment. Then that becomes a substantive motion and must be voted on again. And the withdrawal of a written motion, which is what you're asking me to do, which I'm not going to do. I think it is important, and it amazes me, that most councillors who came onto this in May, onto this council in May, went to the standards training, and Beth Evans, the very competent trainer, suggested to everybody that they read the local government model code of conduct. He was very surprised that we hadn't adopted it. So I find that this excuse that, oh, I haven't seen it, when you might have been on the council for ever such a long time, I don't know. But, you know, oh, you haven't seen the LGA on the code of conduct, when it's a standard thing that's recommended in councillor standards training, I find quite bizarre. But the point is that I believe you've got to follow the governance of this council. You've got to follow the rules of debate and the constitution. And that is what has to happen. If a notice of motion is proposed and seconded, it has to be voted, or you have to go through all the rest of the.
Councillor Brennan, that's just what I'm trying to do. I said you weren't going to withdraw it, so we'll go to the vote. You've proposed it, Councillor Brennan has seconded it. All those in support of Councillor Brennan's motion, please show. Have you counted them? All against? We voted down then.
29. Can you just check it?
On abstention, sorry, abstentions.
Yes. Councillor James, you're intimating something to me I didn't quite understand. Could I not be voting?
I was pointed out, Chris,
Sorry.
All right. You're abstaining.
Well, no, I didn't vote because I'm a bit confused with this, because I've got to admit, I agree with Councillor Brennan on this. I don't disagree. Why it's not? Well, coming before Councillor Brennan noticed a motion. Yeah, I just don't see, it seems to be a convoluted way of going about adopting this, which we will be adopted. There's no argument about that, but it shouldn't, I don't like delegating the standard necessarily to adopt it.
Well, I suppose the standards committee will debate it. They'll come back with a report, probably with a recommendation that we adopt that. Well, we voted on, we've done that.
Chair, just to confirm the result of the vote, it was 2 for, 27 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Okay, item 18 and 19 is exclusion of the public as the remainder of the meeting contains exempt confidential information. So I propose we go into part 2. Second by, yeah. All in favour, please show. Against?
Any abstentions?
Any abstentions?
26 for, 4 against, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, item 20 is operational services relocation.
What do you choose?
Sorry, Tom.